Okay, there's no good chill spots coming up. Like, it's this elevator, and then it's immediately Donovan, and then we meet Armina, and then there's the time chapter. So either I continue and go through this new game cycle now, or I take a break and continue finish this later. This is probably the most optimal point. Okay. I'm a bit honest with anybody who might be watching. I said that I was gonna maybe do 3 playthroughs into Transcended playthrough or difficulty. This game has been so fucking like monotonous on this playthrough in particular. Like, it's not, the problem here is not that I have like unlocked everything that makes it boring and there's like nothing new to unlock or something like that, you know? There's like nothing new to progress or, you know, something like that. It's more so that this game's gameplay loop and the combination of enemies and encounter design, I suppose, as a whole, is a big problem with this game that weighs it down a lot. Like an absolute rock, actually, when it comes to finding enjoyment when you play it. Like, having it like be like you go into like a room, there's an encounter that rates your like combinations of attacks and how much damage you did like after each encounter. It feels so like oppressive, and every time when there's an encounter it always feels like the game is trying to like force you to like perform kind of, rather than to just explore the mechanics, because of how many like different like pretty annoying combinations of enemies that it puts on the screen that like suffocate the player, to not allow the player to like express like their combinations of like different attacks that they might just try out for fun, you know? So it more so forces out like this meta gameplay rather than to, you know, just do whatever kind of thing. Because every time you go into an encounter, you know that if you take risks in it, you have to start the entire encounter again. It's gonna be always like a long drawn out fight, you know? So it makes you feel like you don't want to take those risks more often and you want to stay on your comfort zone, you know? Rather than to try out new stuff and see if it's fun or not. So the gameplay loop of this game is like, it's way too like directive, I guess you could say. It like forces the player into a certain mindset when you're going through areas in this game. And it always keeps the format the same, that's another problem. It's always there's platforming and then you do some random looting of items that are not that useful, you know? And then there's fighting. Platform, item loot, and then there's just the same feeling encounter that you have always done. That's actually another thing. Like, especially on this new game, where like it's not introducing any new enemies, like all of these encounters feel the same. Pretty much. Apart from like a few very annoying ones, like the fucking electric wraith enemies. Like those enemies you always have to play very different when those are around. But if it's any fight besides maybe that enemy in particular in it, it always feels about the same. So it doesn't feel like there's enough variety anymore. On new game, it kept being interesting because, first of all, when I had not all loot skills unlocked and all that, you know, it was obviously significantly more challenging. So just literally the challenge alone made it more interesting. And then, you know, all the new enemies that we kept fighting and that kind of stuff, it gave more life to it, I suppose. Gave more variety and more stuff to be excited about. But now that I already know everything and the encounters just feel like, it's kind of like how this new game plus has put the enemies in. It just feels like it randomly selects the enemies almost. like, it feels like every time when there's an encounter, the game just like, it's like a random like number generation, and it just spawns like certain enemies seemingly at like random most of the time, and just mixes and matches like any like different enemies that you have met throughout the game. So nothing here feels fixed anymore. Nothing here feels like unique, you know? I really hate that. So, after all that has been said, I think this Chimera playthrough will probably be my last playthrough of this game. I'm not gonna go for Platinum in this game anyway, so like, I know I could easily do the Transcended difficulty, but it's just like, if I'm not like enjoying myself when I play this game too much, like, what's the point? Like, I was already getting bored on this playthrough, but like, the thing that kept me playing this playthrough, also, you may have noticed that I've kept like a couple days breaks on this like New Game Plus playthrough a lot. It's partly because I've been doing some other stuff on the background also, yes, but a lot of it also on the time that I did have for something like, you know, playing this game, for example. I chose not to play it and I chose to do something else just because I don't feel excited to play this. And that's actually if we are like very strongly simplifying video games or like hobbies, if you don't feel excited to go do it, then there is something wrong with what you are doing, or in the like media that you have chosen to try to enjoy. There is something fundamentally that is just not correct there. And that's how I feel with this game. It's like I almost like avoid playing it, kind of. So I think I'm definitely gonna keep this as the last playthrough. I really hope that the devs make a sequel for this game though. They tease the sequel a lot. Because I feel like this game has a very strong God of War reboot vibe on it. There's a lot of cool mechanics that they have as a base, but if the devs just get more time to bring more gameplay loop variety to this game, for it to feel more fresh when you play it, I think this game has insanely nice potential in it. But why do I say that it's like the God of War, like a reboot, like... What's the fucking word? God of War, like reboot-esque, like style or problem that we have going on here? It's because in the 2018 God of War, like the devs clearly at Santa Monica, they spent so much time laying the fundamentals down that it's very obvious for whoever has ever played the 2018 God of War that they clearly ran out of time when it came to designing some enemy encounters and enemy variety in particular in that game. Like, the enemy variety in the 2018 God of War is like half of the enemies in quantity compared to like God of War Ragnarok. Because for God of War Ragnarok, they already had the fundamental mechanics down, the like character design down, the character rigging down, and all of that stuff that comes into them translating the God of War experience into a whole new like genre basically of video games, you know, of action game. They took so much time trying to like perfect that, which they did do very successfully as well. But that's the reason as to why the 2018 game suffered with enemy variety and boss variety significantly. Which is something that they completely like justified or made better in the next game. Like God of War Ragnarok, they had so much more time after they laid the fundamentals down in the first game to just get creative and just make the game infinitely more like enjoyable in terms of like enemy variety, like encounter variety, environments even variety wise, you know, new realms to explore more than the first one and all that. It's very clear that the devs had much more time to express themselves and the world in that game compared to the first game, and I feel like this game is the same. The devs for this game created something that they had not created before, that they weren't too comfortable with, probably. And then, when they are going for the sequel, they just basically take the fundamentals of this game and just crank it to like a 10 out of 10, you know? Or 10x. That's what they're gonna do for the sequel whenever it releases, I hope. So, I don't think that this is a... I mean, I'm never gonna say that this is a bad game. But I don't wanna say it's a mediocre game either. I think this game is cool. But for the reasons I mentioned before about the gameplay loop becoming very monotonous after a while, it's definitely all justified, like, criticism for this game. But I do want to like this game a lot. And especially when they do make the sequel eventually and just, you know, bring more variety and make it more interesting and refreshing. But yeah, I think tomorrow or the day after, whatever, I'm just gonna finish this game on the Chimera difficulty, and then I will just add it to the many collections of games that I have recently played, and probably write something about it, because there is one very strong validating thing about this game that I have mentioned many times, and I truly stand behind what I said. I think the cadence combat in this game is still probably the best of any game I have played. And I'm not gonna count games like Sekiro or Dimesia, because that kind of is cadence, you know? Like, Sekiro, for example, like, let's say that most enemies, when they deflect you, then they attack you with a quick attack right after. So, because you can predict that happening, it's like you play on a cadence, you know? It's just like R1, R1, and then it's like ting, and then the enemy attacks you right after. So it's like R1, R1, enemy block, deflect, R1, enemy deflect, enemy block, and then you deflect. You know, it's kind of like that. It becomes like a rhythm game, but I don't want to count that, because it's like a very cheap rhythm game. Like, it's very simplified, I feel like. So I don't want to count that. So if we don't count games like Sekiro or Dimesia for the rhythm game, then this one is so far my favorite when it comes to cadence-based action combat.